Well then, let's get started, everyone. I'm going to call us to order and declare we have a quorum for our meeting of May 18th, 2022. And first, we do our usual housekeeping motions. Would someone make a motion just to suspend the rules to allow the committee and staff to participate remotely because of...
I'll move suspension of the rules.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, and I guess we need a roll call for that.
Councilmember Raval,
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma, Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Lauren Berlin,
Aye.
Joanne Salome,
Aye.
Kathy Feingold,
Aye.
Monica Bobo, I believe she's connecting to audio.
Oh, okay. Oh, great.
There she is.
Yeah, perfect.
Monica Bobo,
We're just suspending the rules.
I think we lost her.
Motion passes.
Yep, thank you. Okay, and we have our second housekeeping motion, which is approval of the minutes of our April 19th meeting. Do I have a motion on that?
So moved.
And a second?
I second.
Thank you. Okay, and a roll call on that.
Chair Raval,
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma, Councilmember Reed,
Aye.
Lauren Berlin,
Aye.
Joanne Salome,
Aye.
Kathy Feingold,
Aye.
Monica Bobo,
I'll abstain because I was not at the last meeting.
okay, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And then, so our next item on the agenda is a public comment. And Marion, I'll let you tell us what we have in the way of public comment.
Yes, we have a lot of public comment tonight, which is great to see. We have so far 3 people that are signed up to speak tonight. However, one of them is Monique Parsons from the YMCA, and I believe that since they're presenting, I'm not sure if usually they provide comments during their presentation.
Right, maybe we'd save it for when we get to that item.
Okay. And then I just want to make sure somebody in the audience asked if it was too late to sign up. So I just want to tell everybody that if you want to be able to do public comment right now, we can unmute you. You just need to raise your hand. So we have one additional person, Rose Johnson, that also wanted to speak.
Mhm.
And so far, that's all I have. I have Paul Joseph also that raised his hand. I'm not sure if it's for public comment. I do have his written comment, and I was planning on providing a summary and providing his comment in full since he provided some additional feedback. And then I've got about a summary of 70 plus
Okay.
that provided written comments through various modes.
Mhm.
So I suggest I can start with that, and then we can go to maybe the verbal comments.
Well, let's go with the verbal comments and then
Okay.
wrap up with the summary. So I'll let you.
Sure. So I had Betty Bogg that was signed up to speak first. So I'm going to allow her to speak right now. And Ms. Bogg, if you want to unmute yourself, you should be able to provide your public comment.
Yes, I can. Thank you. Good evening, Chair Ravel, members of the Housing and Community Development Committee. My name is Betty Bogg, and I'm the Executive Director of Connections for the Homeless. Connections strongly supports the YMCA's application for ARPA funding for their men's residence project. As an advocate for housing for all, we are deeply grateful for the more than 150 units of affordable housing that are provided by the YMCA. Since our inception more than 37 years ago, Connections has worked in partnership with the YMCA to house our community's vulnerable residents and to keep them stably housed through wraparound services. The funding you will authorize this evening will ensure that the men the YMCA serves have access to dignified services in a welcoming and supportive environment. This is equity in action, and I urge the members of this committee to be in full support of this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Stephen Vick that was also signed up. And you can unmute yourself and provide your comment.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Good evening, everybody. Fellow committee members and council members. My name is Stephen Vick. I'm the executive director of the Infant Welfare Society of Evanston. And I'm here tonight to support Family Focus's request for ARPA funds to support the renovation of the Family Focus building. I'm one of over a dozen tenants in the Family Focus building. Infant Welfare Society of Evanston is probably one of the older tenants. Our organization is over 110 years old, but we've been in the Family Focus building for close to 30 years. The teen baby nursery serves our youngest mothers and fathers in Evanston. We actually recently took on another high school student recently. And I think those young parents that are struggling with all of the challenges of parenthood, but then on top of that, all the challenges of being a teenager and young parent, deserve high quality grounds, high quality facilities, bathrooms that are functional. We know we're building a new school in the 5th Ward. We know that there's a campus approach to that build. I believe Family Focus has presented or will be presenting proposals that show not only their own participation in funds, but state funds, federal funds that are planned to support, I believe, about $11 million for the renovation of the Family Focus building. We all talk about equity a lot. We all talk about the 5th Ward a lot. I think this building, not only as a historic building, but a building that houses hundreds and hundreds of programs and serves thousands of children, deserves high quality facilities. And while Family Focus has been doing their best to renovate and has periodically put in hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years, there is a need for a wholesale renovation. And I'm very excited for the opportunity for a local, state, federal, and Family Focus partnership in developing the revenue for this project and providing a facility that we all can be proud of. And I know for our youngest parents in my program, they deserve to have the highest quality facilities. And I'm hopeful that this committee will vote to approve the ARPA funds and for a very great collaboration that will bring the type of facility that not only our clients and our staff will be proud to be in, but I think the entire community would be proud to have. So I strongly support Family Focus. I strongly support some of these ARPA funds going to be a part of that $11 million project. And I truly, truly hope that we can vote to have those dollars support the Family Focus agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe we have Rose Johnson that was hoping to speak. So I'm gonna, and Ms. Johnson, if you'd like to speak, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody, to those I know and those I'm proud to meet for the first time this evening. Sarah, it's very good to see you. Eleanor, very good to see you again. And everybody else, I look forward to meeting you in person if we ever get out from under COVID. I second Steve's words. And we all know how important Family Focus is to the community which it serves, how many not-for-profits there are within that building. And I think it's very important that we maintain, well, not maintain it the way it is. We need to improve it, then maintain it. We need the funds. And I remember when we had when the mayor had the town hall, I spoke there, and talked about how important it is to have all those services, all the social services that are in that building available and accessible to people who don't necessarily have cars or cab fare. It's a very, very important part of this community. So I would just ask that we remember promises made. And I think Steve mentioned how many not-for-profits there are within the building. It's just a very, very important building to that particular community, and Family Focus is beginning to fix it up and treat it as it should have been treated many, many years past. I appreciate the opportunity to talk. I was late, I know, but there are too many things going on for somebody like me to keep up with. So thank you very much for allowing me, and please just remember the importance of that building being in close proximity to people who need those services. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that would be it for the verbal public comment. I do not have anybody else that is currently signed up or has their hands raised. So I can provide you with a summary.
Yeah, please do that.
Of the written comments. So we got a lot of public comment in the meeting packet. We included all the comments that were received by the packet deadline. There's been additional comments since. In the packet was included a letter from signed by more than 50 of the residents in support of the YMCA. And we received additional comments, about 10 comments that were in favor of the project, mentioning community support, mentioning the role that YMCA has had in the community, the affordable housing that they provide, and such unique type of housing that they provide. I do want to mention that we did get one resident that was opposed to the project, and I would like to share their written comment. They were wondering what is the case for improvement that will disrupt the lives of the current residents, and had key questions such as what improvements are planned, how will the lives of residents be disrupted during the remodeling, are the planned improvement really needed or simply so someone can get a feather in their cap for having secured a grant, and why are you asking for comments without presenting a more detailed proposal, in particular without having answered the above questions. And that was one of the written comment we've received. I'm happy to share some of the additional letters that we've received with the committee in writing by email since they last received the packets. There were 2 additional letters. I can also share a summary of the public comment received through the form, which is some of what I'm mentioning right now.
And so all those letters were regarding the YMCA project, or?
Yes, and that makes sense given this is our second meeting, and tonight is the presentations for the other 2 projects. So they likely will have a little more time for community support. We got one comment regarding the family focus project, and that was the person that just spoke.
Okay, great.
Marianne, I do see Paul Joseph has his hand up.
Oh, yes, I'm happy to okay, happy to promote them so they're able to speak. Mr. Joseph, you should be able to unmute yourself to be able to provide the comment. Oh, we can't hear you. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
I understand that there are structural repairs necessary to the building. I am concerned about the transition. What I've heard is that residents will be housed in a hotel. Is that feasible, Will it be in the downtown area? How will we get our mail? Will we have Wi-Fi? There are dozens of practical concerns that a person would not think of if he were not a resident. And how are those concerns going to be addressed, and how and is it going to be an ongoing process? In other words, it's very easy to say we'll put the residents in a hotel. Is that feasible? Is that within the budget of the project? And to do it in the downtown area, in proximity to the Y, where we are members and might want to use the facility.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph.
I do believe that those issues are being addressed by the folks at the Y. And I have to assume there'll be meetings with the residents to be able to answer all those questions.
Well, let's not assume it. Let's see that the Y stays on it.
Yeah, I'm sure they will.
It is budgeted. And one of the things when you have public federal funds, making sure that when people are have to be moved temporarily for rehabs and things like that, that is a requirement of the federal funding. So it will be worked out, Mr. Joseph, I can assure you. And it's just, we'll work on it separately and offline with the residents. It's not something we can do right at this moment, but it will be done.
Okay, it would be good to know that this is ongoing and that our concerns will be addressed. And I don't believe it's too soon to address our concerns.
Right, yeah. No, it's important to answer your questions, yes, right.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So now we're ready to dig into our discussion and consideration of these issues. And the first item was actually a staff update on basically where we are with the ARPA funding and allocations that have been made, et cetera, and what's left for us to allocate. So is that Sarah talking about?
Yep, that'll be me. And we're actually going to start with, guess what? We got our entitlement grant amount. So I just want to do that real quickly too.
Okay.
And then we're going to, so we're going to pull up a slide deck here real quickly.
Yes, just give me a second. I'm sorry.
Yep, no problem. I can talk while we're waiting. Our CDBG home and ESG grants were released for 2022 on Friday. And we have our CDBG grant amount is a little bit less than we estimated, but the amount of program income we got in was much higher. And so we have a less than 2% difference in our total budget. So anything we do will not trigger a substantial amendment, thank goodness, but we will making tweaks to the action plan, and we will bring that back to the committee for at our next meeting, at our June meeting. Home, we actually got an increase and we had more program income. So that we have a little over 10.5% more than we had estimated. But again, that's not going to trigger an amendment because that's just based on the grant amount. ESG was really close. I mean, we were $55 off on that estimate. So, but I just wanted you to be aware of this because it's something that as we get into, we're going to go over the other, next slide, please. The amount of other sources of funding. We're going to look at ARPA. As you recall, we're showing the ARPA buckets. There was a more detailed but expenditures by category in your packet, but it's hard to make that visualize on slides. And there is, remember, some flexibility between where things belong in these categories at some times. And there's also the ability to move the categories, change the amounts of the categories if City Council sees fit. But you can see that overall we have allocated almost 20 million. So we're really close to having half of our total ARPA funding allocated, a little over 23 million left to officially allocate. And our category, when you look at the requests or the estimated amounts for some of the things we're looking at, we're doing a great job of getting our money moving. So let's go and look at the next slide. This is our disproportionately impacted communities, which is the category that our work for the most part falls under. The youth violence interventions is the only official allocation under this, but we have a lot of things pending. Right there, we've got 5 million. So that shows you where we are against that $8,098,654 that's in that budget. We can look at the next slide.
I'm sorry, where are you seeing 5 million pending? I don't see the 5 million.
We have the one-stop shop, the
Yep.
McGaw residence, 7 million.
But that's 7 million. Okay,
I'm
just
sorry.
making sure I'm not. Yeah,
No, you're
no worries.
right.
I just want to make sure I'm not missing something.
Never let me add even in my head at this hour. Yeah, you're right. So we are very close to being, if all of these things were funded. I do want to point something out that I think is really important. Participatory budgeting could very much have, that's a $3.5 million allocation. And that I think will be highly relevant for many of the disproportionately impacted community issues. So don't think this is the only money that's going to be going to disproportionately impacted communities.
Okay.
So next slide, please. And thank you, Lauren. Council member Burns was particularly interested in looking at other potential sources. So we have added up all the stuff that we have to consider. One of those things is CDBG. Now, in our public works folks have been very efficient with their bid packages in the last 3 years, actually. So we expect when we absolutely close out our 2021 alley projects and other capital projects, we will have approximately $270,000 that are unspent. Now, one of the things that we, and this will also be part of our recommendation in June, we want to recommend is we had some 2022 capital things that we couldn't fund. And this gives us an opportunity to do some of those additional things that the committee looked at. As long as we keep that funding in the livable communities goal, we don't have to do a substantial amendment to our action plan. However, we will have to, after just saying that, we will have to do a substantial amendment to our 2021 action plan for two things. We have $129,550 that was in our administration budget that was not expended, and that we can't carry over and use for admin in future. So that will require a substantial amendment to that plan. And we can put it into any CDBG category technically that we want, except administration or social services, public services. So we'll talk about that next meeting as well. We looked at CDBG CV. We have about 300,000 of that almost $1.6 million that is not allocated. And that is something that could be used. That is really quite flexible in many ways. It has to be a specific tie to COVID, much more than, certainly more, our regular CDBG doesn't require that. And ARPA doesn't require the same tie. a couple of the possibilities that we're talking about are homeless services. As you may recall, last year when we reallocated some of our CDBG entitlement to the CARES Act, we did that specifically and used that funding for additional homeless services. So that's a possibility, and also putting funding toward capital things such as a homeless shelter would also be a possibility. Those are all there. We have quite a few things in the CDBG CV action plan, so we really have quite a bit of flexibility, and we're not going to try to make a decision on that right now, but just want you to be aware that money is there. The CD loan fund, this is the revolving loan fund from our CDBG program, which we got about 70,000 more in program income last year than we expected. So that's why that is quite high. That is designated for the rehab program. But again, we just want to make you aware of that. Technically, it could be used to do any kind of housing rehab. But when we use CDBG for a facility, either for the Y or for family focus, it will trigger some of those lovely extra compliance requirements. It will trigger Davis-Bacon prevailing wages, which could drive up costs. It will require a HUD environmental review, which is not the end of the world, but it's busy work. And it will require, if we split funding between two grants like this, we do complicate the compliance both for the recipient and also for the city. One more thing in the CDBG realm, and that is the NSP program and income that is becoming CDBG program income. So that too, again, but every time we use CDBG for any of these, either of these two projects, excuse me, it would trigger Davis-Bacon, which could increase their costs, and also, as I say, complicates just having multiple grants. One of the things we will recommend is trying to keep the CDBG in our traditional infrastructure and the sidewalks that we want to put in our lower income neighborhoods. We could use it for park improvements that we know we need and various other things that, so we're not recommending we split the funding necessarily. Split the funding for a project between two sources in that case. Our 2022 home funds, this was based on what we thought was going to be available right before we got our grant. We didn't update it, so there's a little more. But home is not something that can be used easily for the YMCA's rehab. When you do SROs, it gets remarkably complicated. And it also is not, the family focus and the one-stop would not be really eligible for home. Home ARP, same thing, different purposes. The home ARP, we are looking at using it for shelter and also potentially for TBRA. Affordable Housing Fund. We have more than this in the Affordable Housing Fund, but we have budgeted for 2022 in our budget $1 million of use of the Affordable Housing Fund. The Affordable Housing Fund is our most flexible funding source. It also doesn't have any deadlines. And so quite frankly, I think from a staff recommendation, we keep it simpler if we use one source. And we also need to look at the timeframes for spending our different grants. So those are the balancing acts. There's one other possible source, and this would be eligible for the family focus building, and that would be the West Evanston TIF.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be a consideration. Again, this is their first meeting. We're not going to be trying to allocate funding right at this moment per our discussions earlier. We have a lot to cover, but that could be looked at as a, that would not trigger all the federal requirements, they'd still only be stuck with one bunch of federal reporting requirements. So that was just something that Councilmember Burns had asked for, and I know that other people were interested in, just to get some idea of what funding sources there are.
Yeah, no, it's very helpful. So what is the deadline for spending these various sums of money? I mean, is the clock ticking?
Every single CDBG grant year has a different time frame, but we have up to 8 years to spend all of that money. Now, the thing about CDBG that's complicated is you have to spend all your public services in this fiscal year and all your admin in the fiscal year for which it's allocated. But the rest you can carry over for really quite a long time, as long as at the end of the 10th month of your fiscal year, you have no more than 1.5 times your allocation in your line of credit. Home has a 2-year allocation deadline and a 5-year expenditure deadline. So the 5 years is the 2 years is part of the 5 years. So it's a 5 years total. Home ARP, I don't remember just off the top of my head, but it's very close to the regular.
I was just in general, I was just kind of wondering.
Yep. And then ARPA has to be committed, and not just we're going to spend it on this. It has to be a contract or a subrecipient agreement by the end of 2024, and it has to be expended by December 31st, 2026. So ARPA really has some of our shortest timeframes of some of these grants.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So committee members, do you have any questions about all those numbers?
I have a quick question, and you probably have said something in regards to that before, Sarah. On the Davis-Bacon triggering of the prevailing wages, is that for the portion of this funds, or it'll be for the entire project? My understanding is that it'd be the entire project.
You are right.
The cost would be significantly escalated.
It can be the cost, because what happens is you're paying basically union scale on everything. But it also increases the compliance. And Monica can support me on this, because when you have large projects and you have to look at weekly timesheets and make sure that they are all compliant, and ARPA has significant relief from some of those most onerous forms of compliance, which makes it an appealing thing to work with external organizations who don't do this all the time. If the city is doing a capital project, we have to pay state prevailing wage and have all the state timesheets and everything regardless. So when we do a project, it's, well, are we following federal prevailing wage or are we following state prevailing wage? And the funny thing is, we end up paying state prevailing wage even when federal is lower, because that's the union contract. So, it's just kind of we don't gain much of anything. So we're stuck with paying that, and we're stuck with the compliance on our own projects. So one thing to be aware of with CDBG, when we're doing housing rehab, and which is really what we can do with CDBG, if the property has under 8 units, then it doesn't trigger Davis-Bacon, which is why we use it mostly for small scale rehab. With home, Davis-Bacon is triggered if there are 12 units in the project, regardless of whether they are physically the same. It's so the smart way to handle home is just if you have scattered site projects, just never get more than 12 units, and never get 12 units or more. But when we do things like the Anne Rainey apartments, all of those are covered by Davis-Bacon there too. So
great.
More than you wanted to know on that, I'm sure.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, well then let's move on to the first really big item on our agenda. And since this is something that I think we're going to be wanting to vote on at this meeting, I think I'd like a motion to be able to have it in front of us to move forward with. So would someone make a motion that the committee recommend $3 million in ARPA funding for the McGaw YMCA for the renovation of its men's residence.
Madam Chair, I'd be happy to make that motion. This is Councilmember Newsom.
Okay, and is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Wait,
So-
no, would we, okay, we got, I see that Monique and
Yeah.
Jody are,
Right.
thank you.
Yeah, are there comments from, Monique or anybody before the committee starts deliberating, or are you just here to answer questions?
I can definitely do both. Thank you for having us here again tonight. I'm excited to be here and to talk more about our project. I want to thank you for, especially the city staff, for taking us through this process. And we are elated to really get to the questions and to sort through this project and explain a little bit more about what we envision for this going forward. So I'm ready to answer any questions you may have, and thank you again.
Great, okay. Well, I'm sure we'll have some questions. So I guess there are two. I was intrigued about the landmark designation information that was in the packet. And is that so Monique, is that something that you all have talked about? Is that a?
Yes, so we have worked with city staff in the design review, zoning and funding process. Just, I want this committee to know that we extended invitations to host meetings for several departments to come and talk further about our project and the landmark decision. We have been very open to having these conversations, right, going forward. And we made that clear from the very beginning. However, I do believe that this process is about the affordable housing and the change we plan on doing with our residence program. We are open to having a discussion about the landmark decision after we get through this process, of course, and we're committed to that.
Sarah, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that the Y has had significant discussions with our historic preservation planners about windows and all that sort of stuff. And I think that we are agreed that the work needs to preserve the character of the Y and make it so that, the discussions, their architect was on our Historic Preservation Commission for a number of years. So they are really looking out for this. I don't believe we are going to have any issues with this. And I think that, as Monique said, we're focused on the funding. We will work out whatever is necessary about the windows and any desire to landmark. I think the Y is just as interested in preserving their heritage and the integrity of their building, but whether or not it has to be landmarked at one specific point in time is something that I don't think is critical.
Okay, Councilmember Newsome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So yeah, following up on that, Sarah, so you're suggesting that we don't have to make this landmark status and the agreement on the windows kind of a condition of the ARPA funding?
Correct. And I also think that because it isn't really the purview of this committee, right. I don't think that this is really where it should be. And as I say, the Y has already been involved in discussions and they're quite protective of their building. So
yeah, I would agree. And I'd also like to just kind of acknowledge a point that was actually addressed in the memo from Mr. Sterling, which acknowledges that the significance of this building, the historical significance, is cultural, political, and social associations. That's what makes this a special building. Yeah, there's some architectural features, but let's not get hung up on that. It's the stuff that happens inside the building that makes this special. And we have a once in a lifetime opportunity to keep doing that good work for another century. So let's not get too hung up on window replacement.
Yep.
Okay. That sounds good to me.
I will take my hand down and just
Okay.
express my support and enthusiasm for this investment in a much needed service in our community and also in the Fourth Ward.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. We love our building and we know how important it is for this community. It has been here for a very long time, and which is why we wanted people to come into our space and to view our space and to be in conversations with us about the future of this building. We've never been opposed to that. And it wasn't mentioned throughout the process until, the letter was put into this packet. So we invited that. We invited that conversation and we'll stay committed to it through this process.
Okay. Kathy.
Muted. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Monique. It is a really excellent project. I guess as a lender, I'm sort of looking at the financing besides the ARPA funding. So I think the thing that I was most curious about was the individual capital campaign and the time frame, like where you're at with contributions and how long you think it'll take you to get to goal.
Yes, I'll allow Jody to join me in this conversation.
Hello, committee members and all. We definitely are ramping up the campaign. We are taking advantage of the request because of the timing of the ARPA funding. But we kind of came into this process very ready to go with our scope. While we have $3 million pending with this request, we have another $1.5 million pending, and then the next kind of like $500,000 that is in the pipeline. So given this kind of timing and whatnot, we're really looking at completing the raising of the funding in the next year to 18 months. That is kind of like the setup of, and mostly individual donors. There are some other grant opportunities that once we reach 50% fundraising complete, and then also 80% fundraising complete, that we've got some other private family foundation donation opportunities. But we've got a pretty, I would say, conservative and thoughtful and ambitious plan laid out.
Excellent, thank you.
Other questions or comments from the committee? Ugo, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Ravel. My comment is in regards to the landmark status or becoming a landmark in Evanston. And in my experience, it becomes a hindrance to modernization of a building, in particular windows, because windows are named on most landmark status for buildings. And these are 100-year-old it's a 100-year-old building with 100-year-old windows that are just drafty, and you name it, they're beautiful, but I think they're becoming a landmark. And I know Sarah said that this is not of our concern for this committee, but I since that letter was named in the package, I think that we got a door open to discuss this a little bit, and also for other things that we don't know what else is going to be uncovered with this reconstruction or refurbishing of the property. I agree with Councilmember Newsma that what goes inside is what is the most valuable for the community as well as for the residents of that building. So I just wanted to make that comment.
And Sarah. Yeah.
I just wanted to note that there is a remarkable development and there's a lot of advancements in different ways, even in replacement windows for historic buildings. There's been quite an advancement in the last however long, because, you know, but there are also, you know, that can and will be all figured out. And the rest of, really almost all the rest of the work is interior, with the exception of the new entrance, and that has already been reviewed and approved. The Y has had a number of additions over the years. So especially when you're looking at that east facade, you know, there was first the pool that was built, the second pool, and then the Sebring Lewis Center over it. So the historic preservation staff, when looking at the way the that was designed, one of the important things is the way it's designed and structured really is in character with the building. I'm actually trying to find, because Carlos had even commented on the entrance being really beautiful, and that it contributed, it really was in character with the building. So there's been quite a bit of historic preservation review and thought, Ugo, so that you know that's those items are not in question.
Right, and as you stated, Sarah, our architect is a part of this process of making sure that we maintain the integrity of our facility. He has the experience, he has the knowledge, and we've already started having thoughtful conversations with window experts so that they too understand how important it is for us to maintain the character and the integrity of our facility.
Right. Well, I'd like to turn the conversation to a different aspect of this, which is, this is our first opportunity using this scoring survey of an ARPA funding request. And I just wanted to throw it open to the committee to see if you had any comments or questions about the survey and reactions to using it, and because we're going to be using it again for our next meeting with the next couple of projects. So, see, yes, Lauren.
In the spirit of feedback, I found the survey very helpful, specifically having an example available to review, because I had not scored something previously using this model. I erroneously, in retrospect, scored on community support a little lower than I should have, because I did not book time to review that part of the packet till 4:30. So, you know, I think there has to be opportunity to later. I initially just saw 3 letters instead of what's clearly much more support. But yeah, I found the packet, I found that approach really helpful. The survey was good.
Would you like us to pull up? We have a summary, we have an average scores of all for the committee that we can pull up and use to discuss. That was our objective, was to get you kind of like,
yes,
okay,
please.
where did.
Yeah.
Can you see the screen?
Yep.
So okay, so we've got the average scoring. So basically what we did is we took everybody's scores and added it up for each category, which was feasibility, capacity, budget, return of investment, inequities, addressing inequities and inequality, and community support. And then we also provided the average score for each category. And then at the bottom, you have the total score out of the total point for all category combined, and the average score for all categories combined. Any comments that were provided, optional comments in the survey, have been compiled at the bottom, so you're all able to see those comments. So what we're seeing is fairly high score 225 points out of 240 total, with an average total score of 4.69 points out of 5.
Comments from the committee? Would you want to take a couple minutes to digest it?
I made a typo in one of my comments, but that's, don't need to dwell on that. These scores are about what I expected. I expected them to be fairly high, but not unanimous 5s across the board.
What I see in the comments is that my only real reservation is clearly echoed in some of these comments, which is simply that I know that the funds can make up to 25% of the total cost, and that this came in very close. And I say this as someone who, you know, I support the program, but I did catch that. That gave me pause because you know, some of the potential money that was identified in the submitted budget was pending, but a lot of it was prospective. And so we've talked a little bit about that this evening, where the additional funds are going to come from, but that did give me a moment pause. And it sounds like it gave other people noticed that as well.
I actually, in looking at some of these comments, would love to see if we can still ask Monique and her team about, well, first, the second from the bottom, talking about construction costs escalating and how that will be taken into account for a project that is not scheduled to be constructed for another year, and then also about the ADA accessibility, if that's enough based on their current population. So sorry, that was 2 questions.
Yeah. So Monique, are you there?
I am. Jody, can you respond to the budget question?
Yes, we do have a contingency line item in the budget. Without having the proposal in front of us, I don't want to pull up and throw out a number, but that is something that we're having, quite honestly, monthly conversations with our project manager in real time, so that we're continuing to revise and look at what that means if we started construction right now, and then also how we're planning for escalation over time. So that is an active fine-tuning budgeting conversation that we're having with Bully and Andrews.
Okay, and then thank you very much, Jody.
Yes.
And then just a question about our having 10% of the units ADA accessible, consistent with your current resident population, and a feeling that that is adequate for the facility.
So in addition to the historical preservation being in our architect's wheelhouse, the LCM Architects is also known and accredited for ADA accessibility. They do a lot of universal design. So while the percentage of units really fits into what is compliant, I want to respond to this question of like, how does that fit with our population? We definitely work with our residents to make sure that they have what they need, whether it's resources as they age in place, but they can also like maintain independence. And so as we kind of like forecast what accessibility needs we may need, the fact that all of our doors are going to be like widened just a little bit, we're kind of like taking some things into consideration where light switches are being placed. And so while some of the rooms aren't going to be big enough to be wheelchair accessible, we're definitely going much deeper that the rooms are more accessible with anyone who would have a walker, a cane device, which those don't meet ADA standards, but we're really thinking about mobility issues with the full range of our resident members.
I would also add that it's not just our units that we're thinking about. It's our bathroom, it's our common spaces that also need to be ADA accessible. So it's other spaces as well outside of the living quarters. So I know this percentage believe only included the units, but there are other areas that we are making sure are accessible as well.
No, that's a very responsive thought, you know, the way you're thinking of it is exactly like you should. So thank you.
Yeah, I think the last time we presented, we talked about the current shower spaces, right? And our goal with the renovation is to make sure that there are private shower areas that that support any gentleman living or aging in place so that they are able to access that facility with dignity, private spaces, as well as areas that are more safe than they are now.
Thank you.
I do want to mention that if anybody wants to see the proposal, there was a project contingency in the proposal that was provided last month in the budget.
Thank you.
So given their total, we are under the 25% requirement for the ARPA funding, right? Because we'll be under 25%.
If the relocation, the temporary relocation is included, if you take out that $1.25 million cost, the 3 million is just over 25%.
But a note, that is not a requirement of ARPA, Ugo. That is a city kind of
It's kind of an
something that
I'm
we've
comfortable
looked at.
with where we're at. We're pushing the envelope a little bit, but not much at all dependent and not at all depending on how you look at it. So I'm cool with where we're at.
Well, and even from our public comment this evening from Mr. Joseph, the consideration for how we prepare and move and handle the relocation is definitely a high priority and cannot be separated as an extra from this project, right? We already have 156 men with us right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's obviously very important. But yeah, Lauren.
I just want to say, I think it's a really great project. I think, I think this is a very high score, right? I mean, 4.7 is incredible in average, given that highest is 5 in any individual category, and SROs are super hard to fund. And I thank you guys for taking so much time to explain it to us and walk us through it. And I think it's great for our community. I'm super excited about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So does that mean we're ready to vote on the motion to recommend to council the $3 million in ARPA funding? Oh, no more comments or questions? All right, then I think we're ready for a roll call.
Okay. Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed. Councilmember Reed. Councilmember Burns.
He is, oh, good. We got him on. I was just trying to figure out if I could promote you.
Lauren Berlin.
Aye.
Joanne Salome.
Aye.
Kathy Feingold.
Aye.
Monica Bobo.
Aye.
And Hugo Rodriguez.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
All right, well, congratulations. And we will look forward to more conversation about this when it comes to city council, but I think the score is very positive, and looking forward to a successful completion of the project.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your support. Sarah, thank you for walking us through this process.
One other note to the committee. You can adjust anything if you want to still before we take it to council as well. So I remember Lauren commented that you scored. I don't necessarily think we necessarily feel that everybody has to go back and rescore, but if the committee wants to make any adjustments, that's something that you could choose to do
Yeah,
right
no,
now.
I had incomplete information. That's on me. I'm happy to fix that. We
Yeah.
can circle back, Sarah.
Yeah, I think that would be good because these are the numbers,
Yeah.
the score that's going to go to council. So
Right.
if there are
Yeah,
adjustments you'd like to make, let Sarah know, and then
yeah.
that'll be good. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Our next item is just a discussion, because I don't believe we're ready to take a vote. We haven't done the scoring or anything, but a discussion of the funding request of $3 million in ARPA funds for Family Focus Evanston Center revitalization. And are we going to have a presentation, Sarah, or?
Yes, we're going to have a presentation here.
All right, excellent.
We have a number of people here. Dara Munson, who is the executive director, is here. Dottie Johnson, who is their financial officer, and some other folks as well. So, and we are going to pull up the presentation, correct? Or are they going to run it?
We will be pulling it up.
Okay, good. Thank you. Oh, we should actually maybe just ask the members to just really, the Family Focus representatives, just briefly to just introduce themselves. I can't see them all now, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows who's here to add it when we get to questions.
That would be good.
Sure. Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good evening. I am Dara Munson, President and CEO of Family Focus, and I will turn it over to our CFO for her introduction.
Good evening, committee. Thank you for having us. I'm Dottie Johnson, the CFO. I will turn it over to Mariana Osoria.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mariana Osoria. I'm the Senior Vice President of Partnerships and Engagement, and I will pass it over to Shanaran Hilliard.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shanaran Hilliard. I'm the Senior Vice President of Programs and Impact. Glad to be here.
Welcome,
I will pass it to Vanessa.
Good evening, everyone. I am Vanessa Allen Graves, and I am the Center Director for Family Focus Evanston. And I think that is all of us that are here.
Okay, well, welcome, everybody.
Wonderful. That is it. It's good to be here with you. Again, I am Dara Munson, President and CEO at Family Focus, and really excited to share our vision for the work that we are doing in Evanston. Just very briefly, Family Focus and Chicago Child Care Society merged as organizations effective last January 2021, and we provide services around early childhood education, youth development, and family support throughout Northeast Illinois. And so it is our pleasure to have some time to focus on the Evanston Center, where Family Focus was founded in 1976. On this slide, I just want to do a little bit, talk a little bit about the history of Family Focus in Evanston and the fact that our organization, as Rose Johnson so eloquently stated earlier, is accessibly located in Evanston's 5th Ward. The building itself is home to the last predominantly Black school before desegregation. It was built in 1905 when the school was predominantly white, but by 1945, Foster School was predominantly Black, having a 98% Black student body. We are really happy to join this particular meeting and hear a successful grant proposal by the YMCA, one of our close partners and tenants in the Family Focus Center, as it today houses some of the most impactful organizations that provide a myriad of critical services throughout for the 5th Ward residents and of course all of Evanston, having 15 distinct agencies as tenants in our Family Focus Center. And it's also very critical to note the historical nature of the building itself and where it sits and sat. There's something on my screen here, where it sits and sat as related to issues around the African American community. We're all too familiar with the issues around desegregation and how African Americans connected to the Foster School and are very honored to be a part of that history today. As we know, race equity is critical to the well-being of our children and our families, and honoring the fact that Black families that attended foster school or taught there have very special memories and a deep love for the school building. And so with equity at the core of the family focus work and our present day work, we are really honored to acknowledge that history, the rich history of the foster school. And next slide, please. I'm going to turn it over now to Vanessa Allen Graves, who is the Assistant Center Director for Family Focus, just to share a little bit more context around the center, the work that we're doing, and some of our tenants and services provided out of the Family Focus Center.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, my apologies. My screen seems to have frozen on my internet is very unstable, but again, thank you all so much for considering. I'm really excited about Director of Family, our community must maintain this haven, as it is a strong source of education, advocacy, and prevention and intervention services that help strengthen children and families within the community. Family Focus is the place to go when you need help in the Fifth Ward community. And some of the statistics that we know to be true about the community that we serve, the next slide, please, is that there are families in the Fifth Ward we know struggle disproportionately from poverty as compared to the wards, neighboring wards in the Evanston community. The life expectancy is actually even shorter for these residents, primarily due to a lack of affordable health care and health education. And there's also that link to poverty and death by violence for this population. We know that these economic and health disparities result in twice as many ward residents facing mental health distress as compared to other neighboring wards in the Evanston community. So we firmly believe that this ward needs family focus, and some of the things that we do to kind of offset some of this disparity consist of our own programs. The next slide, please. And under our own programs, we have the Family Advocacy Center, which is a DCFS funded program, serving 200 plus families in the community. We provide parenting education, parent coaching, anything that we can do to stabilize the families. And this service is not just open to families that are DCFS involved. We also offer this to our community at large, the Evanston community and the neighboring community. We also have our early childhood program, again, focusing on the low socioeconomic families within our community to close that gap between children from this community and children from the neighboring community and school readiness. So we provide early childhood education to parents who have children in that age group between birth and 3 years old. School readiness is really a major focus on that. And then we have our youth development program, which is primarily our after school program serving our elementary school children and that elementary school children just in general, and that middle school area age group. And this again is an enrichment program to help them to increase their readiness for high school and increase social skills and anything that we can do to also work with their families. The case management program provides linkages to other resources in our community for the families that come to us. We also have a grandparents raising grandchildren program, which consists of about approximately 25 to 30 grandparents. And this provides respite, support, and advocacy to grandparents who at this stage in their life may not have thought they would still be parenting and just need that extra bit of support in the community. So again, we offer all these services really trying to link the community to those things that we need to close disparities from those earliest to provide ourselves a family focus. As Dara mentioned before, we have 15 tenants performing a wide range of service under our roof. These services include and that's the next slide, please, include entrepreneurial services, small business readiness, preschool care, community advocacy, youth development, infant and toddler child care, and many more than I think I'm going to go into, but we offer a wide range of services. And so together between the services that Family Focus itself offers, with our tenants, we easily service 3,500 to 5,000 people a year. That is the number, and I'm sure probably Evanston Community Foundation, District 65 and District 202, I'm sorry, Child Care Network of Evanston, the Women's Club of Evanston, Northwestern University, of course, the YMCA of Evanston, Vick and Dane Center, and the Community Evanston Public Library. So these are a fraction of the partnerships that we have, and we are a beacon in the community, indeed that we are. And our motto amongst the staff is that if you can't get it under the roof of Family Focus Evanston, someone there will point you in the direction of where you can get whatever you're needed. So thank you so much for your consideration, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit about, can you go to the next slide, actually? There was a group that formed several years ago, and I again want to acknowledge Rose Johnson. The Foster Center, Our Place, a community advocacy group, was assembled in 2017, and this was at a time when the Family Focus organization was exploring selling the building. And during that time, this group put together a vision for this building, for what the building could become. And so we're sharing some of the renderings and the concepts from FCOP as they thought about, the future of this building. So we are committed, actually, the vision that they laid out for the potential of the Family Focus Center was magnificent. And it honored the history of Family Focus, the history of Foster School, I should say, the history of the African-American community, and the need to ensure that the center itself is state-of-the-art and has all the amenities that individuals that we serve and those that our tenants serve and the broader community deserve when we think of high-quality services. And so with FCOP's continued support, we continue to be in touch with FCOP. And as we have decided a while ago not to sell the building, we are focused on galvanizing around the needs of the support for the center's current participants and those that are to come. So we truly think that once completed, that our center will be a vibrant, robust asset to the community. We will have the space configuration and the physical environment that will enhance the quality of life for not only Fifth Ward residents, but also other residents in the city of Evanston. Our organization services, the services that are provided by our tenants, will create a safe place for residents and important to Family Focus, meet the needs of the whole family, starting with the earliest years. We believe, as Vanessa talked about, some of the health and educational health disparities and educational achievement gaps, that a fully renovated center will address some of those gaps. For our work is targeted at leading to longer term positive outcomes for individuals. So we're presenting two phases, and Dottie will share a little bit about the budget. So we're presenting two phases. Phase one is really the stabilization of the building. There's a lot of work, a lot of deferred maintenance work that we need to address, a lot of the bare bones of the building that need to be addressed. Again, the individuals that Vanessa just talked about that come through our doors really do deserve a building that honors their potential and the work that they want to do for themselves and their families. So phase one is really to get that stabilized, and phase two offers a plethora of opportunities for our tenants and again, the broader community. And again, in subsequent phases, we're looking at the construction improvements around classrooms, potential library, auditorium, or theater space. So again, a lot of those details will be thought through in subsequent phases. But we're also thinking about the recreation space, learning opportunities, technology, resources around a culinary arts program. So really looking at our commercial kitchen and what that can do and provide for the community. We're also thinking about ways to aim for a net zero carbon space. And we know that is big dreaming, but with, again, the history of the building and the energy that it takes to keep it running, we think that's going to be a critical aspect to the potential of the building. And as we think about issues around the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, we also want to make sure that we're offering quiet space, maybe a healing room or something that speaks to the emotional well-being of our tenants, of our participants, and some of the team members at Family Focus, as well as creating a space for smaller nonprofits to incubate, or hotel for organizations that just need a space to do some work. So thinking about the flexibility of the future of the building, in addition to, again, phase one, which is really taking a look at the issues that need to be addressed in a more immediate aspect. So phase one, I'm going to turn it over to Dottie to talk a little bit more about the budget. But again, our total request is $11 million. Our total project cost is $11 million, and the total request is $3 million. And Dottie will go into some of the details of our request. Dottie?
Thank you, Dar. Could you advance to the next slide? Nope. Go back.
Excellent.
That one. Okay. So as Dara mentioned, we have broken out our project into two phases. The first is really looking at the infrastructure needs, the immediate needs that were addressed or identified by IFF during a study that they did last July of 2021 to help us identify the more immediate needs, and then also to talk about pre-development costs for the bigger vision of the organization. So you'll see that we're looking at exterior considerations, making sure we have adequate security lighting around the building, looking at any repairs needed to the roof or the exterior tuck pointing of the brick of the building, and then looking at making sure that our windows are adequately insulated and secure from any leaks that have happened in the past. On the interior side, we've actually started working on some of the more immediate needs because we just couldn't wait for dollars to come through. So we have started looking at flooring where it was needed to be replaced. So for instance, with the Y space where they have their Head Start classrooms, we replaced that flooring earlier this year for them, but there's still a lot more space of flooring that needs to be addressed. Electrical needs, we need to upgrade the electrical, we need to upgrade the plumbing within the building. The ceiling tiles on the bottom floor, we have some that need to be replaced, particularly in the gymnasium area. And then all of our restrooms, we have 17 restrooms in the building that need to be retrofitted and made ADA accessible. So that is the biggest chunk of what will probably be spent on that first phase one. In addition to that, we also are looking at the project management costs. We actually have issued already a request proposal for a project manager. We're envisioning that it will be a firm that will help us with the program planning or the project planning for this engagement, as well as doing the community engagement, helping us to identify the ideal mix of tenants and how we can accomplish everything that we're thinking about within that space. with the resources that we have, the community, making sure the tenants that are there right now, as well as other tenants that we could bring into that space on as needed basis to support the community needs. We also have a theater that was, as I understand in the past, quite active and had a lot of community projects or engagements that were going on in that theater space. It needs to be completely renovated. So we've also included costs to start addressing that renovation or thinking about how that theater can be used going forward. And then the IT infrastructure is also a big piece of what we need to address to make sure that we have stable infrastructure for internet and accessibility for not only the current tenants of the building, but also the community residents who will be utilizing that space for needs that they will have. That total cost we're projecting at $4.1 million. That comes to 37% of the total budget amount. Phase 2, and we anticipate that will be anywhere from 12 to 20 months. So 1 to 2 years for that phase 1 process to take place. Phase 2 will really be determined by the work that the project manager will be doing during those first 2 years to identify what additional new build out will be needed. We know that there needs to be a new HVAC system will be put in place, be energy efficient. So looking at what resources we can bring to the building to make that work. And then also what other funds are available that we could use to help supplement the cost of putting those particular enhancements in the building. Also, of course, we want to continue to keep our project manager in place to help us make sure that we manage this construction project because we do not have that expertise in-house. So we're relying heavily upon the firm that will help us with this project management. That is coming in just under $6 million at $5.9 million. That's 54% of this budget. And then the final piece of this budget that we have put in place is an operational endowment of $1 million to help us fund the annual operating maintenance cost of this building. So that will hopefully project, or what we're projecting is somewhere between 50 to 60,000 annually that fund will generate for us in revenues that can support the ongoing costs and upkeep of the building. Now, looking at the sources of revenue, we are asking you for $3 million and are hopeful that you will entertain and ultimately approve that request. We have already secured from the state of Illinois through the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity a total of $1.275 million. We have a capital request in for federal appropriation of $1.1 million. We are going to be conducting a capital campaign to raise what we conservatively believe will be $2 million. With then still just under 3.6 million to be identified. And we're looking at a variety of services or funding opportunities for that, not including looking at who ultimate other tenants might be in the building to help with that fundraising. I went blank. TIF dollars that was set by the new TIF zone that was established in Evanston, new market tax credits. We'll be working diligently with our board and our development or the project manager to help us identify where those other sources will come from. I'm going to turn it back over to Dara then for final remarks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dottie. And you can go advance to the last slide. This is also one of the renderings from FCOP. And we just want to share that for Family Focus, this is much more than a straightforward capital request. We really do organizationally see this as an opportunity for Family Focus to address the myriad of systemic inequities faced by families that depended on the foster school years and years ago. for education, support, and a safe community gathering place. We are really committed to leveraging the former foster school, now Family Focus, Our Place Center, again, as a vibrant, robust asset to the community in ways not previously imagined, but of course, with the springboard of FCOP as they thought about the potential future of the Family Focus building. So with equity at the core of all we do, we really do have an unwavering commitment to the Fifth Ward residents and residents of Evanston as we all navigate through the tribulations of what is sure to be a post-pandemic society. And as Dottie shared, we really do thank you for this opportunity for sharing our vision for the potential of the former foster school, now Family Focus, and would be happy to entertain any questions.
Great. Well, thank you for the presentation. And I'll go now to the committee for some questions and comments. Everybody had a chance to mull this all over. So it's a lot of information to take in. Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Family Focus team, for presenting this evening. Before I make some remarks, I wanted to see if Sarah could, I always get social service and HCDC mixed up, but I know on one of the committees, we went over, I think it was social services, we went over, Family Focus requested funds to operate some of their programming, and we went over some information on how many case management plans they filled out and how many new clients they brought on. Sarah, do you have that information?
We do.
Readily available?
They're really, we have, it's not exactly some of those, but it's some, I think, very important statistics that we put in the memo. Family Focus has, is one of the largest providers of really needed social services in the youth development services. In 2021, they served 86 youths. 79% were from low-income households. 94% are African-American, 3% are Latino. Our early childhood home visiting program that had 207 children and parents, all of them low income, about 46% African-American and 30% Latino. The family advocacy had 105 families in services, and again, high percentages of African-American and Latino. Family Focus, I'm actually trying to get our social services memo up at the same time because we didn't put some of those statistics, but had some of the highest numbers of new households or individuals that we got into case management services. And that was one of the real goals of the way we restructured our social services funding. We have for many, many years funded a lot of different programs, and we have many, many wonderful programs. But what happens is we are not, this was our move to focus our funding on the people of greatest needs by providing what we call robust case management, which really helps these households and individuals who have the greatest need access the things they need through really robust case management plans that are directed by the people in services working with case managers, and then connecting them to other needed services. And this is a really important part of the city's move to try to provide equitable service delivery. And so Family Focus is really a major partner of ours in that. And again, I'm still trying to get, I will find those numbers, just one second. They are in the social services core committee, the social services committee packet, and I'm.
Sarah, just cut me off when you find it, but and this will be underscored once Sarah finds the numbers. But from what I recall is that Family Focus, routinely overperformed in the amount of case management plans that they were entering into and completing, the amount of new clients that they were seeing year over year. So, you
So
know,
I got some of them right here.
you have it perfect.
107 new individuals or families into case management in 2021. 394 households served in that. That was 153% of the objective of what they had projected to get into these services. 309 service plans. And one of the things when you are first getting new people into case management, frequently it takes a number of months to even get to the point where you have a full service plan. So I think that's an amazing number. So they had 78% of their clients that they were serving in robust case management plans in their first year of implementing this. And also had 247 referrals to other services, very specific with follow-up. So those are the numbers that Councilmember Burns was talking about, which are really quite astounding. And
It is. It is, Sarah. And I'll close with this, that, you know, my mother worked at CETA Neighbors at Work when I'm growing up in Evanston, which was at the time next to Heckey's. And I always told people that I know when I was campaigning for this seat that there were a lot of votes that most of the votes that I got, I didn't get because of my service. I got because of the service of people like Alderman Holmes, who was the longtime director and co-founder of Family Focus, but also because of my mother, who served at CETA. And the reason why a lot of people had so much of thought fondly of those individuals is because when you think of the Fifth Ward and West Evanston, CETA and Family Focus are really synonymous with the Fifth Ward, right? It's one and the same. And what that means is that most people in the Fifth Ward, at some point, someone in their family is going to get services at that time from either CETA and still to this day from Family Focus. Like it is an extended member of your family unit. If you live in the Fifth Ward, at some point, you're going to have some involvement in Family Focus. And maybe not everybody, but I would say 90% of people who grew up in Evanston in the Fifth Ward and lived in the Fifth Ward, at some point, you're going to get services from one of those places. And it is 100% an extension of Fifth Ward families. And they went a long time quietly with a lot of deferred maintenances. And we know that we saw that with McGaw YMCA and with other nonprofits. There's not a big, there's not a lot of support out there for support to help nonprofits. And I think it's incumbent on government to provide resources to address vulnerable communities and to support nonprofits who are doing the work every day. So thank you for taking the time out to present to us. And I know this is just the first discussion, and we'll have an opportunity to do the scoring and to ask more questions. But I just wanted to very plainly just put this into perspective. Family Focus is the Fifth Ward, and this aligns also with work we're doing on a foster school campus model, where on a regular basis, myself, Dara Munson, Henry Wilkins, who is the founder of STEM School Evanston, Dr. Horton, Superintendent of District 65, and others, we're meeting on a regular basis to think about how can we develop and coordinate all the development in this area in the next few years. We all know that a Fifth Ward school is coming to Foster Field, which is the field just behind Family Focus and Fleetwood. So what does it look like to have modern social service institutions in Family Focus that's modernized and renovated, and also have a brand new school, right? A state-of-the-art K-8 elementary school and middle school, as well as we're working at the same time on trying to expand the footprint of Fleetwood Jourdain and add a second gym or a swimming pool. So, think a few years down the road, if we could modernize and renovate all of these locations in this campus, the type of support we can provide this community. I mean, the potential is really exciting to think about. So thank you for presenting, Sarah. Thank you for working with them on this. And look forward to talking about this more at our next meetings.
Okay, Lauren, you had your hand up next.
Hi, thank you so much for taking the time. I live very close to your building and I'm very familiar with it. I just had a question, which was that if you could, and you may not be in a position to right now, but if you have thoughts you're willing to share or able to share on some of the TBD around the fundraising. I don't know if you have some people in mind, but you don't feel comfortable sort of talking about that yet, or I don't know if 3 million from the city would be sort of catalyzing. If you have sort of matching funds, you think you'd be able to line up, but it's just sort of a significant percentage of the budget. And so if you have any information you can provide on that, that would be great to hear. I'm going to mute myself. I apologize for any background sound. It's bedtime in my house.
Thank you, Lauren. It's a great question. So in short, yes, the 3 million would definitely catalyze additional funding and support. So we have a few, Dottie talked about a few of the asks that we have out, and the one that we were successful in receiving from the state capital budget. And as we think about hiring our project manager, we're also looking at other entities that can help find additional funding. We would like to not have anything financed. So we will either find additional funding through public or private dollars. We've not gone down the path of detailing out what that plan would be just yet. But we are thinking about, what to leverage, how to leverage. And we know that the 3 million in request from the city of Evanston is critically, if we're not even able to do phase 2, we have to do phase 1, right? And so that definitely would be catalyzing though for phase 2 and subsequent phases. So our initial intent is to ensure that we're stabilizing and addressing some of the maintenance issues from years past. But we have full commitment from our board. We have about 400 employees, team members across the Chicagoland area in different centers, different communities, and a board that reflects the service or represents the service areas that we have for the organization. The board is fully committed to our work in Evanston. They have an understanding of not only the cultural aspect around the building itself, but that it was founded, Family Focus was founded in that building by Dolores Holmes and Bernice Weisbord. So the board itself is committed to the work that we have presented and the potential of the center itself. So while we don't have a fully fleshed out and detailed private fundraising plan, we do know that there is interest. We do know that there are some potential commitments that are, as soon as we're able to present more detail, we feel pretty successful. We feel that we will be pretty successful in acquiring. And again, we will talk to some entities about helping to find additional public dollars.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Newsma.
Thank you, Chair Bell. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Relocated. Okay, good. I'm excited to be able to, be part of the process of kind of rebuilding that Fifth Ward Community Center there, that community campus, as Councilmember Burns put it. And I'm glad that he recognized that there's other development going on with the Fifth Ward School and the Fleetwood Jourdain Center as well. So, to what extent are the plans for the Foster School, the Family Focus building? To what extent are these part of an overarching plan, or do we have independent plans kind of happening all at the same in the same location?
We are. Oh, go ahead, Councilman.
I was just wanted to answer that and saying that I think it's the latter. But because there's a lot of moving parts, we're all committed, and Dara can pick up on this, on meeting regularly to coordinate our efforts. and to be lockstep on the same page. And to give you an example, I'm having conversations now with Dr. Horton, because District 65 owns a lot more land in that area than I think people understood. They own not where if you're familiar with the Fleetwood area, they don't own where the basketball court is. The city owns that, but they own where the parking lot is. So if you're familiar with Fleetwood, the parking lot is actually owned by District 5. And a lot of people didn't know that. And so if we are to build a swimming pool there or a second basketball court, the best way to do it is to build out, not up. And to do that, we'll have to likely come up with some type of agreement with District 5. And so what Dr. Horton told me is, hey, obviously he can't make any promises this early on, that those decisions have to work through the board. But I think he was really excited about the opportunity of having a pool there, right? Because the student population that they serve is the same that we serve at Fleetwood. And I think he saw that as a huge benefit to have a public pool that the students could access. So that just shows you what type of, and then let's say if in that scenario, if that required us to use where the parking lot is now where the swimming pool, if the swimming pool would be where the parking lot is now, okay, well, where does the parking happen? If you look at the plans that the district announced, they're going to have a raised field with parking underneath. And so then I talked to Dr. Horton and said, okay, well, could we, share parking space? And I don't know, maybe there's 20 spaces or 25 spaces, however many it is currently, that we might need to replace with a swimming pool. What does it look like to have those relocated underneath this raised field? So that's the type of collaboration that's happening on those calls, just to give you an example. And then Dara, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else, but thanks for the question, Councilmember.
Thank you, Councilmember Burns. Yes, so we are actively meeting with Dr. Horton and the District 65 representatives, as well as individuals that are committed to the Foster campus concept. One of the things that we know is that the students, the anticipated 900 students that could enroll in the District 65 school will have needs outside of the traditional classroom experience, and Family Focus and our tenants are in position to explore what that means for us and how we can extend ourselves to those students and their families, because the social service aspect of education is what we do. So we're having that conversation. We're also committed to participating in the design, programmatic design of the school's planning. So we're meeting with the District 65 team members regularly on that, as well as meeting with their architects. I think if we're planning a major renovation of our center, it makes sense to leverage the individuals, the intellectual understanding of both the current Family Focus building and the potential, the to be developed school for District 65. So we're committed to working with them on that. So we've actually already Dottie has met with their architects. They've done a walkthrough of our center. And we know that as we continue to get more information and make decisions, there will be additional opportunities to leverage the work, the energy, the input that is happening for the District 65 school for the Family Focus redevelopment.
Yeah, I think with three entities involved, the city, District 65, and Family Focus, it really just makes sense to coordinate to the extent possible, since we're all kind of working towards the same goal here. And we don't want to end up with, everybody putting in 3 basketball courts when you only need, which gives you 9 basketball courts when you only need 4 or whatever, whatever the example is. So, I mean, it's great to be able to have a conversation with 3 stakeholder groups like this, and to the extent that we can coordinate for the benefit of the Fifth Ward residents and the community, just to make the most of this opportunity. I'm glad to hear that conversation is happening. Specific to this request and the budget compared to the request for ARPA funds, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's done the math, come up with 3 million out of 11 million being something above 25%, which is our general rule of thumb. If anybody would like to offer some thoughts on that.
Well, and just to add to that question, since there seems to be a bit of hesitation about whether when would phase 2 actually happen. So if we aren't talking about phase 1 and phase 2 as one complete package, then the ARPA funding percentages gets to be even bigger. So
yeah.
So if you could talk about that. Somebody.
And I will say, going into this, I'm looking for ways to approve this and feel good about it.
Real quick, because I think either my math is off or yours. So you're saying 25% of 11 million is what? Because I think you're a little high.
Well,
I wasn't the greatest mathematician, but I was decent.
It would need to be 12. It would need to be a $12 million project.
It would need
to
be
stay
12 million
under, because 3 is 25% of 12, right? So
I'm taking the zoom on my
so
phone where the
even if you
calculator
do
is.
if you do 2.5, then 3 is 25% of 10. So it's got to be what, like 2.75 million instead of 3 million, right? So it's 2.75 if you do an $11 million project. It's 2.75.
Okay. Yeah.
But to Chair Revell's point, you have to do phase 1 and phase 2 to maintain that 25%. Because if you stop it.
I think 2.75 obviously is right there. I mean, these are all preliminary numbers, so I can see just with cost of construction, these numbers fluctuating here and there. So, but I think we're close. I mean, at 25%, 2.75. I mean, that's pretty close to the ask.
Yeah, we're in the ballpark, and 25% is our own rule. It's our rule of thumb. It's we can write the rules, we can bend the rules.
And we are committed to the full project. We are the project, the vision that FCOP shared, which really energized Family Focus and our board, is really what we are working towards. We're just acknowledging that in order to get to that vision with the current tenants that are providing such critical services, we do have to prioritize some of the work that IFF and others have deemed necessary for us to get done, because it's been deferred for so long. But we are committed to the full project.
And I found it encouraging that IFF did say that basically the building is a solid structure, that even though there's all that deferred maintenance, it's still a really, it's a building worth renovating.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I thank you, Chair Revell. I just wanted to point out that deferred maintenance things are the least sexy things you can do. And I know this because that is one of the things. It's like, gee, do you really want your name on a new boiler or something like that? But
I think that'd be awesome personally.
What is really critical is that the services that Family Focus is providing, and actually the things we're looking at, even we're talking about expanding services, even just as a part of ARPA, where their Family Focus we're working with them on the welcoming center, for example. There are, I think, even more really critical services that can be provided and should be provided out of this facility in this area. And the 25% is a city kind of rule of thumb, and that we've tried to use, but something that I just really want to point out is what Treasury and others who are in charge of ARPA are saying is focus your resources on your areas of greatest need, and the areas that have been were disparately impacted by COVID and were already struggling from before. And the fifth ward, Census Tract 8092, I always talk about this, is an area really of the historic impact of all of the injustices, the redlining and many other things still lingers, the health disparities, all those things. And so I think we have to also just think of that in proportion and maybe think more of the Biden administration's at least 40% of spending ought to go into the areas of greatest need. So it's a different perspective on maybe considerations for ARPA.
And just to follow up on that, early on, we had $6 million set aside just for this census tract. And in order to address what Sarah just mentioned, that really is what this money was in, where this money was meant to go. And I agreed to remove that set aside, but with the understanding that I had every intention to make sure that these investments, that a significant amount of ARPA investments went to this area. If Councilmember Newsom, you'll recall that we just had a presentation by our health department, and I was all the greatest health disparities and health inequities and housing disparities centered on this particular census tract, and Family Focus is right in the middle of it, and is serving a population that makes up all of those awful statistics that we saw. So, I mean, this is ground zero.
Yeah, understood. And I just was able to do the math. 3 million out of 11,097,502 is 27%, close enough to our 25% that I would be comfortable with it. I'm not gonna to feel bad about going over that 25% for something like this.
Okay, Lauren, you have your hand up again.
I do. I mean, I can't believe what I'm going to say is what I'm going to say. So maybe I'll eat my words in a week, but I'm just going to say it right now. I mean, as I said, I live right by the building. Like I want to approve this project. I want to give this project as much money as it needs. I would almost rather, and maybe I'm not supposed to say this, I would almost rather see you all figure out how to make 3 million 25% than us go over 25%, because I just think that when people bend a rule, it's very easy for someone else to say, well, you bent it this one time, why can't we bend it again? Like, I do think there's a reason guardrails are put in place. We're talking about 2%. Like, I hear what I'm saying. I hear myself and I'm annoyed by myself, but I do just want to make the point that I think it's a slippery slope. I mean, I think we can all agree. We've talked about this census tract a lot. We've talked about health disparities, housing disparities. I don't think any of us disagree about the need being urgent and concentrated, and that we need to address that. I'm just saying that I think if this guardrail is in place, if we move it, then we have moved it. And when there might be a less compelling project, we just put a guardrail, So maybe I'll eat it. Hopefully I can't believe I'm being that annoying person, but I just wanted to mention it, And I support this project. I support this. I support putting a lot of money into that community for sure.
I would say the other guardrail is the census tract. That to me is what is the difference in this project is that all of the bad things happening that we talk about exhaustingly in Evanston are happening, all of it is happening in this one area, right?
No, I know. I mean, I know.
I think that's the guardrail, is that if there's a project that's in one of these census tracts, 8092 is one of them, and then there's one on the south end of town in the 8th ward, then I think going from 25 to 27% seems reasonable.
I don't disagree. I just think what happens when it's a less compelling project, and then they can point to this and say, well, you broke the rule for that project. That's what I'm thinking about. Not that you all shouldn't get the money, but that I just want to think about that.
And I think that's why I wanted Sarah that's why I really wanted to keep the set aside, because I thought if we had a set aside, then it would be very clear, like, all right, for these particular areas, they're really important, so important that we're going to create a set aside for them. And again, I agreed to drop those set asides with the hope that we would still understand that the intent of this money really was to disproportionately invest these funds in areas of greatest need, and this is it. But I appreciate your point. I think what those other projects would have to show is that they're in these census tracts, and if they are in these census tracts, I think we should look to make adjustments where needed, because this is where the greatest need is in the Evanston community.
Okay, we have a couple of hands up here, so Kathy.
Thank you, Chair. Hearing what Lauren said, and I see where you're coming from on that, but and forgive me, I don't know if the ARPA scoring requirement is an ARPA thing or a City of Evanston thing. But
the City of Evanston thing.
The City of Evanston thing. Okay, so that sort of reflects impact and importance of a project. And for example, the last project we talked about scored very highly. And I know in my own organization, we look at impact as a factor of the funding that goes into it. So I would be curious to see how this scores, to get more comfortable with maybe going outside of those guidelines, and then perhaps another project comes along that wants to exceed those guidelines but doesn't score as high, and then we have something to base our justification on. Just a thought.
Ugo, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I thought I was muted. As I agree with everything that has been said here in terms of allocation into Ward 5 of funds, and I also agree with the latitude that we might have as a committee to allocate 27% instead of 25%. I think that the thing that it's not gelling well with me is the phase 2 component of this proposal. And it seems like it's a little bit too premature, perhaps, to even think of numbers when the numbers are not really concrete enough. I'm sorry to be bringing this up, but I think that it's not a compelling proposal to me because of phase 2 at this time. I don't know what else you could tell us about that phase 2 that is going to be complete, because to me that is critical. To say 27% or 25%, it bothers me nothing. And I totally agree with, sorry about that, Lauren. And I totally agree with the putting our funds where they're most needed. And I completely see the need of the family fund in Ward 5 and the 5th Ward, as well as in the city of Evanston. But I'm not feeling comfortable with that looseness of phase 2 yet. That's all I had to say.
Okay, yeah, Lauren.
So I'm still stuck on this idea of how do we deal with the 25%. So what I think we could do, and we can talk about this another time, but I'm just going to throw it out there, is we could just say it's 25% cap, but to Councilmember Burns' point, unless you're in this census tract, in which case policy allows you to go up to 30% or whatever it is. Like, let's just do a census tract bonus, the way you get like a density bonus, you know, like something we can talk about. But I think we could put our money where our mouth is pretty easily that way, and just say that way we're targeting these communities that we want to prioritize.
Yeah, okay. I'm just going to point out to the committee that it's already after 9 o'clock and we have one more item. So Councilmember Burns, you have your hand up.
I'll just make one last statement. Lauren, I like that idea. And in fact, it didn't get added to this scoring yet, but I think it should. But I was very clear from the dais during the council meeting when we approved the ARPA plan that I felt like the the 2 census tracts should be added to every scoring rubric. So I 100% agree with what you said, Lauren. And in fact, I think we should add it. And I can pull the recording if I need to, but I was very clear on that from the dais that we needed, in order for me to feel comfortable not having the $6 million set aside specifically for 8092, and I think it was 8102 on the south side, that I wanted to see the census tract in the scoring rubric. I thought that would only be fair. I think it's still an important consideration. So I absolutely think that's what we can do. And then I don't know if Family Focus wanted to respond to Ugo about phase 2.
Well, I will invite our team members to share their thoughts as well. But what we know is that the work of phase 2 really has to do with going beyond the basics of what is provided to as far as social services and human services. The basics is what we can do with our current tenants and our current services. And we are really deliberate and intent on providing not only high quality services, but having a center that Fifth Ward residents can walk into and feel really, really warmly welcomed, and that somebody really took the time to build up the building in a way that respects their future. And right now, the building is beautiful and it is magnificent, and it honors the history that was the Foster School, where individuals, particularly Black families, have such an affinity for by way of their education and where they taught and where they just have warm memories about. And that is the backdrop to that is desegregation and children being bused to schools where they had to assimilate in other communities. So not only am I no longer welcome at the Foster School because of the fire and because it was turned into King Lab School and all the changes, but I'm also having to assimilate into a predominantly white school where I don't feel welcome. So there's a lot of the history of that school is what we're trying to maintain. At the same time, it will be challenging to have equity at the core of what we do without focusing on making this building state of the art and really having it represent what is best about the Fifth Ward students and those that come into, or families and those that come into that building every single day, and they trust Family Focus and the tenants that we're able to have in the center to provide services. So we know that it is very aspirational. We know that there is a lot of work to be done to get to more concrete numbers. And actually, we probably, the budget can be much larger if we really go and dream big and think about ways to make the building itself that state of the art, every nook and cranny of it state of the art, which we really do want to do. So the total project, right now we're looking at 11,097,000, I believe it is, could easily be much larger than that. This is so the range that FCOP actually, when they did their planning, their range was, I want to say 11 to 14 million. So we're focused on the low end of that. And they actually there were fundraising consultants, there were architects that walked through the building. They did a lot of more in-depth work that is just not represented in our proposal. And we couldn't, there's a lot of work that went behind that. So we do have resources of probably more than a year's worth of work that took deep assessment of the physical plant and what it needs as far as what we're talking about phase 1 and the aspirational aspect of it. And so we're happy to share that information. There's a lot of resources, a lot of thought that went into that. And we do have access to those resources and are still in partnership with FCOP. So while what we've shared as far as phase 1 does present to be very aspirational. It is, and that because we believe that that's what the individuals that come through our doors deserve, that type of aspiration. But we do have additional information as far as the thought process that went into those aspects of the potential of the building. Again, the architect that did the walkthrough and kind of created, help FCOT create the vision of what we're calling phase 2. So we do have additional resources that we're more than happy to share along those lines. And Dottie, Mariana, Shanera, and Vanessa, is there anything else you want to add to that? Please do.
I would just say I echo everything that Dara said. This budget here, particularly with phase 2, is aspirational because we need that project manager to help us refine and define how this building will represent this community, what resources we can bring to the table, how we will package that. That will determine a lot of then what these costs are. This is a minimal cost to make sure that we have built out for the current tenants and those that we believe are going to come to the table. We are thinking though that there are a lot of other ways to be able to provide services where we have a revolving office space available to different resources to bring to those community residents, that when we need to have eye examinations for our children, that we have a state-of-the-art medical office that they can come in and do those eye examinations, they can do the vaccinations, they can offer counseling to our families when they are faced with trauma, so that we have, again, spaces there for them to have that. That means that we have to have space that can be readily changeable or to fit the needs of those different resources we bring to the table, so that we can make sure that we have the most optimum mix of services. So please know that this budget is just the tip of what this building could be, and what we finally, when we get our project manager in place and able to define exactly how we're going to provide those services and the mix and the different resources. We want to have digital computer labs for our children so that they can play. I want a 3D printer to play with. So, but to be able to bring those tools to the children and the residents of these communities that don't have access to that have been deprived of those resources, and make sure that they have every opportunity to succeed and dream. And that's what this building represents. It represents really capitalizing that dream for these families.
And Chair, I just want to quickly close it out by just saying that the first phase is not dependent on the second. So the phases are not just arbitrary markers. The first phase fully captures all the things that needed to be done to bring the building up to a certain standard. So the roof work, the renovating the theater, modernizing the bathrooms and renovating the bathrooms. So Ugo, to your point, it's not like we'd be giving them money that would just be wasted if phase 2 is, whether phase 2 ever happens or not, phase 1 needs to happen. And I think that's where the city can come in and support. And what I recommended, which I think they included in phase 1, is to bring on a project manager, which you've heard them talk about, that can then help plan around phase 2. And as they described earlier, I think we have TIF funds that can go to support phase 2 and other phases, as well as we're in conversation with other funders as well. But I just want to make that clear that phase 2 is not dependent on, or phase 1 is not dependent on phase 2.
Well, I need to move us along. And so a month from now, we're going to be back meeting.
Yes.
And we will be doing our scoring for discussion. So I would suggest, but that's a good 4+ weeks from now. So I would say if within the next 2 weeks, you all with Family Focus would like to, put together an addition, sort of an addendum to what you've already sent us. And then we would have that in a couple weeks' time, then we could be reviewing that before we work on the survey that will be working on for our next meeting. Does that sound okay? I mean, you don't have to send us any more, but if when you get home or I guess you're home already, when you review the conversation this evening, if you think there's some additional information that would be helpful to us, then I encourage you to package it up and send it to us, and then we can consider that as we're doing our scoring for our next meeting.
Sure, will do.
Okay.
And just to note, we will add in the budget thing, we will note that the bonus, the consideration, if it's in those census tracts, I don't think we have to add it as a separate scoring thing. I think that becomes part of the budget thing that we will put in that for the 80, 92 and 8102. And so.
Okay, great. No, that's a good idea too.
And if I may, I just wanted to make a couple announcements regarding the scoring and public comment for next meeting. So if we follow the same process for next meeting as we did for the YMCA project, what would happen is that staff would send the survey to committee members on June 14th. And what we did this time is we included any public comment that was shared with us at the time as part of that documentation. So if anyone wants to share some public comment regarding this project or the next one we're going to discuss, if they could send it by that date, then they're guaranteed that it's included at the time of scoring. To be able to share comment, they can use the Google form that is on the committee's webpage on the website, or they can email housing@cityofevanston.org.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for being part of this discussion. It's been very, very helpful. And I think you can tell from our comments, even though we've got some tough questions for you, that we just really, really do think this is an amazing project, really worthwhile for the community. So we will look forward to continuing the conversation next month.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night. So now we have our last item, which is discussing the funding request for only $1 million of ARPA funds for the one-stop shop housing retrofit pilot program. And we have a couple of people to present, I guess. And we're going to preface our conversation. Yes, Councilmember Nusma, go right ahead.
I will be recusing myself from this conversation and the vote since I am a member of Evanston Development Co-op, which is one of the parties involved here. So unfortunately, I will put myself on mute and wish you all good luck.
I have to say the same. I am on the board of Evanston Development Cooperative, so I will have to recuse myself as well.
Okay, and I'm a member as well. I will facilitate this meeting, but I won't be making any comments because it would be conflict of interest. So with all that said, I guess we'll have a presentation, a little bit of a discussion.
Great.
We have already heard about this program once before, so it's not totally brand new for us.
Right.
Right. We have Kara Pratt from the city of Evanston, and Bob Dean, Robbie Marcus, and Hank Love that have joined. And I have the slides that they've shared with me. So I'm not sure who is looking to present, but I'll be sharing my screen shortly. I'm not sure if anybody wants to just start with the quick introduction or if we want to jump into the presentation.
We can jump into the presentation, Mary, and this is Bob, and I'll introduce the other members of the team as we go. Does that work?
Yep, that
sounds great.
Okay. I'm not sure if anybody can see me, but it sounds like you can hear me, so I'll just jump in. So I'm Bob Dean. I'm the CEO of the Center for Neighborhood Technology. I'm also a resident of Evanston and was involved in the climate action and resilience plan that was adopted by the city a few years ago. Specifically on that, I contributed most to the adaptation recommendations, which identified as a top concern the impact of climate change on lower income people and people of color in the city of Evanston. One major concern involves housing, and specifically affordable housing, which is important from both a mitigation and an adaptation perspective. So following the adoption of CARC, my organization, CNT, worked with city staff as well as Elevate to design a program to increase energy efficiency and increase resilience to climate change in affordable housing. We recommended a concept that we call a one-stop shop, which is meant to align funding from numerous public sector sources and make that funding easy for residents to access for a wide variety of home improvements that will make their homes healthier and more energy efficient and reduce utility bills. So this project, in other words, is designed to achieve both equity and sustainability goals. And we're recommending applying this concept in a pilot in the highest needs census tracts. And we preliminarily identified 3 of those, which are the 5th Ward census tract you were just discussing, as well as the one immediately south of it, and the eastern part of the 8th Ward, which is census tract 8102. So we are here tonight to request city funding to initiate a pilot for such a program. There are 2 other partners here with me, Elevate, an expert in energy efficiency retrofits in affordable housing, represented by Hank Love, and Evanston Development Cooperative, a community-owned contractor with a mission to promote affordable green homes in Evanston, and that's represented by Robbie Marcus. We included a description of the program in your materials, and we're here tonight to just give an initial presentation to introduce the concept, answer any questions we can. And we also hope to be back at your next meeting in June with any further refinement of the concept and any expressions of the support for the concept that you would like to see. So with that, I'll turn this over to Hank from Elevate to walk through the proposal that was in your materials.
All right, thanks, Bob. This is Hank Love from Elevate, still bright and chipper over here, coming to you from Ann Arbor, Michigan today. I think you just stole one of our best and brightest to come join you over in Evanston. Congratulations. Bob, can you go to the next slide? So you have the proposal, which provides a lot more detail. In that proposal, you'll see we're trying to target 50 homes or households, single family up through some multifamily units in Evanston. We're requesting $1 million, the majority of which is going for actual home improvements, trying to improve energy efficiency, water efficiency, looking at health and safety repairs, renewable energy potentially. The good news about this program is it's not necessarily novel. Elevate has been able to produce these programs in other areas. We have a very successful program in Madison, Wisconsin right now. Another one starting up in Portland. We're developing one in Kansas City, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Ann Arbor, Dayton, Ohio. So we have a lot of learning that we've done in implementing these programs in other areas, and we can bring the best of what we've learned to Evanston to build the best program yet. We like to try and estimate or at least package the upgrades that might go into a home at different levels to try and show what the potential improvements that might be needed in a home could be. I've been doing this for a long time. I'll tell you right now, you don't know what a home needs until you go into it, but we have to find some way to try and estimate what might be needed on an individual housing unit. So our goal is to provide a one-stop shop. Make it easy for the building owner, whether it is a landlord or a homeowner, to access all the available incentives that they can get, help them understand their options for upgrades, what's going to get them the best bang for their buck, improve the health and safety of their unit, and any other available options that are out there for them, including financing or other services that they might need, like lead service line replacement. So really the goal is to make it very easy for someone to get as much done to improve their home, their household as possible. And we are targeting those who typically have the least amount of resources available to them, naturally occurring affordable housing, and homes in these distressed census tracts. Bob, you want to move on to the next slide? Okay, so the pilot program scope of work, what we are proposing is over 2 years. We will complete the program. We'll serve 50 housing units. We will do some program design and communications work to try and make sure that we're getting community feedback on the front end to help design the actual program. that will then serve them. We'll form an advisory group to ensure that we have community leaders' feedback and also their advisement throughout the process. We'll conduct outreach through natural networks and these community leaders, the advisory group in these the neighborhoods and census tracts 8092, 8096, and 8102 in the 5th Ward. We will provide building assessments for these building owners to try and give them a roadmap for upgrades, things that they can do right away, things that they might want to do at natural points in time when the systems fail, or if they're landlords, when they have unit changeovers and new tenants. We'll help them navigate all available grants, incentives, and financing. Through this program, we are requesting a budget to actually provide funding for some of those upgrades. But we know that they will need more than what we have to offer. We will have a heavy focus on efficiency upgrades, things that will reduce utility burden, energy, and water burden on residents. We will be having a particular focus on trying to cultivate a network of contractors, diverse BIPOC-led businesses, hopefully located in the areas where we're doing this work. Elevate has done a lot of work in other markets, including Chicago and across Illinois and other states, to focus on giving opportunity to BIPOC-led businesses that can do this work. Our partners with the Evanston Development Co-op already have a great network of contractors that can do this work, which is fantastic. Through this process, we are viewing this as a pilot phase. We're going to be targeting building, representative building stock, buildings that are very prevalent in Evanston, to try and understand how we can scale this program, also identify gaps and potential other services, financing solutions, or program improvements we can make to scale it. And that would be the goal after the 2-year time period, is we would have a sustainable scaling plan for this program that could make it a long-term service within the city. All right, next slide. Okay. We have our organization roles. Bob, do you want to just talk about CNT's role?
Sure, I can do that quickly and then kick back to you. So CNT intends to be the main contact with the city and also with the advisory group that we hope to put together to oversee the work, and also provide the recommendations for how the program could be continued into the future. Back to you, Hank.
All right, so Elevate, we will lead building assessments, provide support and quality assurance on retrofits, contribute to the overall program design. As I said, we've been building these in other markets. We have a lot of lessons learned, and we'll have final recommendations for scaling the one-stop shop. And I'll turn it over to Robbie to talk about what Evanston Development Co-op.
Hello there, everyone. My name is Robbie Marcus. I'm a founding worker owner with Evanston Development Cooperative. We are a worker-owned cooperative that is broadly committed to climate action, racial justice, local workforce, and housing affordability. So this initiative really aligns with all of our values. Specifically with this program, we're a design builder of primarily accessory dwelling units in Evanston. So we already have in-house a team of a project manager and a site superintendent who can sort of coordinate reviewing bids from contractors and ensuring quality control and cost control during the program as work actually gets done. We'll also be doing the intake for building owners. And lastly, we are our worker owners of the cooperative. A majority of them are contractors of color. And so as Hank indicated, we already have a good network of local POC contractors. And broadly, as we think about economic equity and the city's CARP goals, hope to utilize this program as well to further build up that workforce of local POC and women-owned contractors, specifically in green construction. Hank, if you want to take it from here, or Bob.
I think next slide. Thank you. Okay, yeah, just quickly on the budget. We have an estimated budget. We've built this off of how other programs have been structured in other markets because we have some data on what that looks like in the early stages in this kind of pilot stage. So we have an administrative budget that's, I think, roughly it's 20%. The majority of the funding is going for retrofit expenses. I think it's, was it 673 of the million is going to retrofits. And then we have other expenses, which will be utilizing funding for supporting those contractors in EDC's network and looking for more to join that network to participate in the program, providing them support so that they can participate and get on the job experience in green construction. Those who are on the advisory board, we want to provide them with stipends for their times. They're compensated for their time, which is becoming a absolute best practice in how we make sure that we ask for community-based organization involvement in these programs. And then a small budget for marketing materials and a web presence to ensure we can market the program to building owners.
And that is it. Thank you for listening to us. We're happy to take questions now.
Thank you. So committee members, those of you who are not recusing yourselves, what kinds of questions do you have? Shall we not stop sharing screen maybe? Okay, Councilmember Burns.
And thank you, everybody, for presenting to us. One question I have is, how does this, is there a way to align this with our, I think it's the CDBG rehab funds? And this will flow into something else that I'll talk about, but that's something that came to mind. I feel like a lot of this work is similar to the work that we may want to do, or we may have done with the CDBG rehab loan program. So how does this align with that work, and how will those two things work together? Is there a way to divert those funds? Are there a way to not only allocate 1 million in ARPA, but use the CDBG rehab loan program toward this work as well, since it seems like it overlaps nicely?
Yeah, we absolutely have that intent. Maybe Hank can speak to Elevate's experience doing that elsewhere, but that's the entire point of the one-stop shop, is to bring together a variety of sources that would be somewhat hard for residents to engage with if they tried to pursue all of these things individually. But I think CDBG is an example. I think lead service line replacement is an example. I think existing energy efficiency programs that are available through ComEd, for example, are another possibility. Where there are plenty of programs that do home rehab, but often they're single purpose programs that go for one thing. And the point of this program is to link those together so it's easier for people to access numerous ones of those with a single assessment, and then ideally linking the construction implementation funds too. So what our recommendation was that does need to live someplace. That kind of coordination won't just happen on its own. And so someone needs to own that. And so our recommendation has been that the city is the best place to own that in this one-stop shop, or to fund the initial piece of it, but then have the actual administration of the program be done by a trusted local partner, which is why we've put together the team that we have here. So I hope that answers your question, but yeah, that's absolutely the fundamental concept between the idea of comprehensively addressing housing rehab.
It does a bit. Sarah, quick question. So who is the point person over our CDBG rehab program currently? Like who owns that on a day-to-day basis?
Well, it is jointly owned in a way, because we actually here at the city, Chris Renard does client, does intake to get people who are interested in CDBG rehab. But our construction management right now is being done by Community Partners for Affordable Housing. We have talked with Community Partners for Affordable Housing about how, this is something we would have to work out the details, but when you get into CDBG, you have certain things that you don't have with some of the other sources of funding, including very strict requirements on lead remediation, lead-based paint and things like that. And Rob Anthony and Robbie Marcus and Evanston Development Cooperative have already been in discussions on a lot of ways they can collaborate and work together. So Councilmember Burns, we don't have that completely nailed down, but we're certainly talking about it because it's going to be really important. You know, there are lots of things we still want to work out about our CDBG rehab program, which is one of which is, can we get them to forgivable loans as opposed to payable loans too? And that makes it, even those sorts of things could make it easier for working with people looking for help. So all of that's got to be part of this whole structure. And that's one of the things to work out. Another thing I've already started talking with CETA about is weatherization funds, for example. You know, that's another major source of funding, but it's done as a standalone right now. And so it's, this is the big challenge, how to pull them all together. And there could be ultimately different lead managers on different projects depending on the sources. We don't know. Those are the types of things that we really do have to figure out.
Okay,
because yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, let's face it, all the programs and services we make available to people end up creating a weird kind of burden. For those kind of building owners that can afford it, they hire an owner's rep to look out for their best interests and how to access the best incentives to make sure they're getting the best deals and getting the best contractors to do their work. We're taking that concept down to the small building level, homes, small rentals, and trying to make sure that these occupants have an advocate to navigate all of this like available incentives and programs and make it easy for them to just get the services that we're trying to provide them.
You're doing single family homes though too as well, right?
Yes.
I thought I heard that in the presentation.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And I guess my thing is that if there's a way, even during this pilot program, where we could have, you know, this initiative managing at least a portion of the CDBG rehab program, and TIBA can still potentially be involved. Obviously, we have to work out those details. I think it may help because I can tell you right now, from the community's end, it doesn't feel like there's a simple, straightforward way to access those funds. And I know through talking with, learning more about this program, I think their idea is to really have a welcoming walk-in space where someone can come in and get information about the retrofit opportunities. And we need that really for all of our funds. And so again, I really would encourage us to think about, again, at least for as long as this pilot program is in operation, for us to find a way to have them really run that CDBG, because we need to find a way to get this money out in the community quicker, working for people. And it doesn't feel like it is. Again, would have to pull the data to see for sure, but I know that there's a lot of need. People have approached me about needing home improvement money, and it doesn't seem like the way it's set up currently, we're able to get it out quick enough. And if we're going to partner with this group, maybe they can also help us with that. Since they're already going to be having similar conversations with community members, maybe for the year we can have them administer the CDBG funds, in cooperation with SEPA. So again, I know that there's a lot to discuss to see if that can take place, but I just wanted to throw that out there. We have to find a way to get this money out quicker and working for people, or else, I mean, people literally decide to sell their homes just on the basis that they can't upkeep them. Like it's incredibly important that we're minimizing barriers to accessing these funds and that we're getting them out in the community as quickly as we can.
Okay, Joanne, you have a question.
Yeah, where would the staff be housed? I mean, I assume there's going to be staff that would be available to talk. So what is the plan or where they would be housed? That would be convenient for residents.
Do you want to speak to this, Robbie, since your organization would be handling that?
Yeah, I think we would want to staff folks specifically within the census tracts. And I think Alderman Burns and I were speaking about just potential places in the ward that might be a fit. And I think this would definitely be a great conversation to continue offline with Alderman Burns on given the census tracts of focus, what spaces could make the most sense, and also the same conversation with Alderman Reed in the 8th Ward, given that that's also one of the census tracts that's been targeted. So I think that's perhaps a follow-up for us to have with the city to identify perhaps some specific sites.
Okay. Any other questions? Do we have enough information to use to fill out?
I did have 2 more quick questions. Just wanted to know how this.
Quick, Councilmember Burns, because it is getting late.
Yeah. To ask about how this fits into our CARP goals. And then also, I know we received $500,000 of federal earmark money for low-income solar, and to also understand how this kind of fits in with those funds. Are those funds that this program can access? Will someone else administer those funds? We're just trying to understand how it fits in the CARP and how it aligns with that earmark that we got for the federal government.
I can speak to that, Councilmember Burns. This is Kara Pratt, Sustainability and Resilience Coordinator. So as you mentioned, we received $500,000 in a federal earmark, and we're currently working with the Department of Energy to jump through their hoops, so to speak, and figure out exactly what the restrictions on that funding might be. But we do fully intend to braid that funding with the one-stop shop so that it can be accessible to those census tracts, specifically always targeting low-income residential solar projects for that funding. We'll have more details, I would say, I think in about 3 months is when we would have really firm answers from the Department of Energy on the restrictions associated with that funding. In terms of the CARP goals, I believe this is the very first memo that has a CARP description on it. This is a new practice that was instated with the climate emergency resolution. So you'll see that sort of CARP line item in the future. The biggest CARP related goal that the one-stop shop addresses is related to environmental justice. Also, it would reduce the energy burden, support building energy efficiency in general, and renewable energy, as well as promoting community resilience. So those are all of the different CARP goals that this would support.
Thanks, Kara. That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. So, committee members, do you have enough information, at least at this moment? Since I don't see any hands up, I think maybe we are ready to call it a night. This was a very full agenda, obviously, but some really important projects for us to learn about and consider, and we'll be continuing the conversation on 2 of those at our meeting next month. So with that, I am going to call us adjourned. Thank you all very much. Our next meeting is June 21st. So thank you, everybody.
Time tonight.
All right, good night.
Thanks,
Good night, everybody. Thank you.